gonna go fly a drone. Let's talk about what you need. I've laid out here the basic essentials that I bring with me every time. Now this isn't including things like batteries or chargers or things like that, but these are the things you need to have with you. Let's walk through it. Now one of the first things and the most important things is you have to have documents. Just like with anything with flying, you need to be well documented. So here are the three main documents you're going to need. If you're flying a drone recreationally, you're going to have to pass something called the trust training. You can do it through different organizations that are third-party. You have to accomplish that training, and then you'll be issued a certificate. On the back of the certificate, it will show you just a reminder of some of the most important rulings for flying recreationally, things you're responsible for, and where to find extra information. It lists the FARs, everything you need to look up more information, and then it gives you some bullet points here, kind of like the 10 commandments of recreational flying, but there are only 7 points here. So that's your trust. You need to carry this when you're flying recreationally. If you're flying 107, you'll be issued a certificate, just typical flying certificate that looks very similar to a pilot certificate for aircraft or helicopter. You need to carry this with you if you're flying Part 107. Now, if your drone is more than 0.55 pounds in the United States, it needs to be registered with the FAA. When it's registered, you will be given a code, which you need to put on top of your drone. It just needs to be somewhere visible on the drone. And then as well, you'll be given a card that you need to print out and carry with you, which has things like the serial number of the drone, who made the drone, and its registration number. So I carry all those with me, and as well, I'll carry a government-issued ID in case I get stopped and they ask who I am, just so the name and the face matches what's on all of these documents. Before I go flying, I will always inspect my drone. These drones can break. They can easily break. And it's small, it's simple, it's relatively inexpensive when you look at compared to other aircraft, but still this is a very entry level. It still costs over $500. You don't want to take this thing up into the air and lose it or break it. As well, drones can cause harm to people and aircraft, and you are responsible for that. So it's always good to make sure that your drone is in good shape and is going to be doing what you want it to do. So I always inspect it, particularly with this drone. I will inspect for loose screws, because there are screws that I have had come loose, especially on the propellers. So I'm always going to be examining those before I fly. And then in terms of photography and aerial photography, I'm going to make sure the gimbal's working, the camera's working well, and make sure these things are all made out of plastic and composites. Make sure none of it's loose and not doing something that it shouldn't be doing. Yep. And then I'm also going to check battery life. So just an overall inspection of the drone, make sure the propellers are all looking good, they're not bent, or even folding it up in this case, they get bent sometimes. So you just want to make sure your drone is going to be doing what you want it to be doing once you get it in the air. With the controller, I'm also just mostly checking battery, and I'll charge it up to make sure I have all the software and everything installed before I go flying. Especially if I'm driving out somewhere, I fly in snow. One of these is really nice for a small drone like this. The clearance on this is like 1/8 of an inch. If you go up to the propeller, it's probably just over half an inch to the actual propeller, but to the landing gear, it's ridiculously low. You can't land on gravel or rocks or anything like that. Even tall grass is difficult. Snow, you can't land on at all. This really helps with two things. One, I can land on snow. It's designed for water. I can land on water, but I've only done that a couple times. But I do land on snow a lot. This allows the drone to be seen from a lot farther away. And whether you're flying 107 or recreationally, your drone needs to be visible at all times when you're flying. This really extends my range. And I'll also fly often with little LEDs that I'll strap onto the legs, the arms of the drone, and that can increase, even in daytime, my visibility to up to a mile more than it would be without the strobe lights. These also really help. It doesn't look the coolest, but man, oh man, when your drone is far away, you can see this way better than you can see this gray plastic. So I highly recommend, if you like to fly out over open spaces, over fields, get one of these. It'll increase your visibility. You'll be able to have better situational awareness with your drone. And again, if you're landing in snow, this is a perfect option, very lightweight. So those are what I'm going to take with me. I'm going to do an inspection of the equipment before I go out. I don't want something to break when I'm already out there. So just a quick overview. A pre-flight is important and is a required part of your preparation to flight under Part 107. So knowing what your equipment is, how it works, and what condition it is very important, especially as you start getting the bigger drones or RC airplanes, things like that. You want to make sure that they're performing properly. Once I know that everything's performing properly and I have the right documentation, I'm going to go into my pre-flight planning on my phone. So let's head there next.
Before I go fly, I always look at these 3 apps, at least. DJI Fly on the right is how I control the drone. I will always open that up in advance to make sure that I have all the latest software updated. Air Control is a great app. It will show you TFRs, restricted airspace, other drone pilots who are flying. It's an absolutely amazing app for drone flying, and I highly recommend it for aircraft pilots who often fly below 400 feet. You can see drone pilots if they're choosing to show their location where they're flying. You can also see hotspots. You can see areas where drones aren't allowed to fly. It's just a great app. We'll start with before you fly. This is going to bring us to a map, and we can choose where we want to fly. And this is just a quick way to get information about where you're flying. This gives you a lot of information. It does not give you all the information, and I'll show you what I mean in just a second. So here we can see northern Minnesota, Duluth. This big blue circle is showing me Delta airspace. This app will show you Bravo, Charlie, and Delta airspace. Everything around it that is not colored, so all of this just typical map, is showing me Echo or Echo or Golf airspace. Then this smaller blue circle here is showing me that there's a pilot who's flying there or plans to fly there. And if I click on that, I can get information such as altitude, if they're flying recreationally, commercially, how long they're going to be flying, stuff like that. Here you can also see these red markers, airplane and the helicopter. Those are showing me airports or helipads, something to keep in mind. So if I want to fly here in Superior, I can click on where I want to fly in Superior. It's going to load up and say clear for takeoff. It's going to show me down here obstacles that I need to be aware of. So there are 2 airports within a few miles that I need to be aware of. But as far as the app can tell, there's no restriction in the airspace that would prevent me from flying here. Now, this is something you really need to keep in mind. I've chosen that I want to fly basically right on the runway, on the airport itself. This is not a place you can actually fly a drone, at least not in regular circumstances. So this is just showing that the limitation of this app. This app is not all-inclusive. It gives you great information and a lot of information, and it's probably used by most drone pilots. But it's not a click and fly. You need to do your due diligence. You need to keep all of your training in mind and make good decisions. And here as well, I can open up a checklist. The checklist will go through things such as, have I inspected my drone? Have I inspected my health? Have I looked at my recency and my current? Things like that. And then notify and fly. I can tell people, hey, I'm flying in this area. I can set the boundaries for that, the height and the duration. Now, a common question that even drone pilots have is, how can I fly in Delta or Charlie airspace? And can I even? And this is something that is important to know, that yes, drones can fly in, you'd want to call it controlled airspace, but Echo is also controlled. You can fly, so for example, if I want to fly up here in the Delta, I can click on the Delta. And it's going to tell me it's controlled airspace, but I can fly in this controlled airspace if I get LANC, which is authorization. And it's very similar to as an aircraft pilot. If you want to fly into a Delta or Charlie, you need to get that two-way radio communication. Since we don't use radios on our drones, we send an email. That's the way I see it. So instead of getting on our radios when we're nearing the area, we're going to email them. But it's not an email, but we're sending them a message. So we're going to say get LANC. It's very easy to do. This is going to open up the Air Control app, which I highly recommend for even aircraft pilots. And this is just amazing. When I saw this app, I was jealous for all of the other aircraft pilots out there that we don't get anything this cool. Look how it shows you airspace. So this is breaking the Delta down into shelves, similar to a Bravo. And the outer ring is showing you 400 feet. So this is showing you that drones can get auto approval through the LANC application to fly up to 400 feet AGL. As you get closer to the actual airport, which is the center of the Delta, that is going to start coming down like a cone. So we see areas of 200, there's some areas of 300 here in the green that's not showing, and then there's 50, and then there's 0. So these are areas that you can apply for permission to fly in, and they're automatically telling you, if you're going to be flying at this altitude or lower, we'll let you fly. Just let us know you're going to be flying. If you want to fly above that, which I'll show you here in a second, you're going to need authorization. So I want to fly here in the Delta. I'm going to click that. This is going to give me, again, the same information that I had in before you fly, things to be aware of. I can click weather, which is great. It'll give me just a quick information about weather. And I can click LANC. I'm going to go for recreational here. And it's showing me that up to 400 feet I can get auto approval. So I can slide over to 400, click next, put in when I'm going to fly, my duration. It's reminding me information about LANC and about night flying in part 107. And as I go further, it's going to tell me that you're pre-approved. So really what this means is I can get almost instantaneous approval. And up here you see this green box is where I said I was going to fly. Earlier I could set those boundaries if I wanted to fly in a large area or a smaller area. And it's telling me when I'm starting, when I'm finishing. I get my approval. If I hit next, I can apply for the approval, and I'll get a text message and an email giving me a code, which I can give to anybody if they're questioning why I'm flying, saying that yes, I have authorization. It's not difficult for drones to fly in this more controlled airspace such as Delta or Charlie. We are back in the Before You Fly app, and we're actually going to go fly now. I really wanted to just show you guys these two apps, the Air Control and Before You Fly, and again recommend for pilots that you look at Air Control if you're going to be flying in areas where drones do fly. If you like to fly low to the ground often, it's good to know. You'll be able to see drones that have published that they're going to be flying, and you'll be able to see areas, for example, where drones won't be flying, and maybe even be able to identify areas where drones often fly. Also, for the drone pilots out there, you need to realize that just because I click right here and it says that I'm clear for takeoff does not mean I should fly in this area. This is an area here where if you are 400 feet off the ground, you will likely still be in the path of an aircraft. This will be the approach end of this runway. Aircraft will be either climbing out for takeoff or landing on this runway, and although the app says you can land, this would be, or sorry, you can fly here, this would be an absolutely horrible place to fly your drone at 400 feet AGL. So those are things you need to keep into account. Know the limitations of this app, use common sense, and remember your training as well. Avoid airports, especially think of airports as at least twice as long in each direction. Don't think just because I'm flying off the end here that I'm not going to be bothering airplanes. Go at, think of this as a long arrow, and don't fly anywhere near off those approach ends. That's where the airplanes are going to be when they're taking off and landing. And as well as a circle around them. If you're just like, oh, I'm off on the side, I'm fine. Remember, aircraft circle around airports, so you want to stay well aware. I know a common rule out there is 5 miles away from an airport. Not everybody follows that rule. Remember your training, follow the regulations and the ordinances where you're flying, and stay well clear of where other aircraft are going to be flying. Takeoff. Choose to fly drones as if they're toys, and I really don't think that's the right approach. Every time you fly, whether you're flying commercially or recreationally, or whether you're flying a small drone or a large drone, you're going to be making choices that have consequences. Those consequences may result in a damage to the drone, damage to other people's property, or even risking lives. I'm a huge proponent of treating every flight as a professional flight, no matter what its purpose is. Doing due diligence in pre-flight, during the flight, and post-flight will ensure everything makes it home safely and just how it should, and they'll be ready for your next flight. This is Andrew from Safety Pilot. Thanks for watching.